And you guys, it's Mental Health Month. So on today's episode, I would like to discuss genograms. Y'all thought I was going to say, hey, it's Mental Health Month, go to therapy. Well, I'll get to that too. But I would like to talk about genograms because it's not widely discussed, because a lot of people don't know technically what it is. So a genogram is a graphic representation of a family tree that provides detailed information about the relationships, the histories of family over several generations. It looks somewhat like a traditional family tree that you normally would see at a family reunion, but it includes additional details about the emotional, interpersonal relationship between individuals. This can include information on medical histories, mental health, substance use, family conflict, as well as positive bonds and achievements. And why I chose to talk about genograms, because it's something that is mainly used within the field of social work, counseling, psychiatry, psychology, but I want to put it out there for everyday people to research it, to get into it, to understand what it is, and to hopefully create their own. And of course, this podcast is all about everything Black and everything social work. And why this is so important, because I can tell you that when it comes to building family trees in the Black community, and when it comes to especially building genograms in the Black community, the Black students, and I mean, it's so funny, I chuckle because it's a sad reality from when I think about when I was in undergrad and how myself and all the other Black students in the social work program, why we struggle with creating genograms and filling in the gaps on genograms. But it humors me because I've been out of school for about 7 going on 8 years now, and my niece recently had to do a family tree and said that she had a lot of blank spaces as well. And realizing that family trees and genograms for the Black community is something that is actually very difficult for us to do, because it's a lot of things that we don't know about our family history, and it's a lot of holes and a lot of parts of that family tree that have a lot of question marks, because first off, half our cousins, we don't even know their real names because we call them Tutu, Mumu, Cece, BB, Kiki, Kaka, whoever. We don't even know their real names, okay? It's cousins still to this day that I don't know their real names, and we are adults. So it's a real phenomenon, and I just want to bring it to y'all attention because I believe genograms are the missing pieces for how you can go about exploring your family history and getting answers to those holes on that genogram answers, so that you can understand where you come from and where you're going and how you set your kids up moving forward. So as I explained, a genogram is a family tree, right? But I like to call it a family tree with additional detail that really does engulf your family context in full depth. So when you build a genogram, I like to just say, especially starting off, try to start with at least 4 generations. So if you are in your 20s going into your 30s, you're my generation here, we tend to have children. So we are, when I say the 4 generations, you go back to your grandmother, to your great grandmother, and then of course your kids. Now, you can choose to do more generations, but it's just easier to at least do 4 generations going to your great grandmother. And what it looks like is, when you start a genogram, if you are the one creating that genogram, you are the main person. So you're starting with you, and then you're expanding from you all the way up and all the way down and from side to side. And you're going through, again, your parents, their siblings, their kids, to your parents' parents, their siblings, their kids, and et cetera, et cetera. And what the genogram does is it gives you a full scope perspective of where there are holes in your family generations that you need answers to. And why this is so important, because genograms, when you get done essentially creating a family tree and you go through actually putting the details to the genogram, you will actually see all the patterns that are important for you to be aware of, so that you know what you are predisposed to. So it goes through the medical. What are the medical things through your family? So are people dying in your family from stress-induced diseases, from autoimmune diseases, from rare diseases, These things are really important to know so that when you are, especially for Black men and Black women, when you are experiencing certain symptoms, you don't have to continuously go to the hospital just for them to say, hey, all your tests are normal. You can actually go straight to this genogram and say, hey, well, I have a family history of these different symptoms, and these are the certain tests that I need you to test for. Whether that is a rare disease or a very common one, you actually can be a great advocate to yourself when you understand what diseases plague your family. So that is truly very important, especially medical wise, to be able to know I might be experiencing early onsets of XYZ diseases. And it's not just you, and it's not just this disease that is only attacking your system, but it's genetic. It's hereditary. So you are bound to get it even if you are the healthiest of the healthiest, even if you took all the precaution. So to have this genogram and to have this complete map helps set you up, and even your children, to get early testing, to do early prevention, to get treatment when said necessary, right? Another thing the genogram does is for mental health. We're in Mental Health Month. When you understand that your great-great-grandmother, whether she was diagnosed or not, had schizophrenia, that she struggled from bipolar, that she struggled from mood diseases, from depression, from anxiety, then you understand that, hey, nothing happened in my life, but why am I experiencing such huge mood shifts? Why did I wake up in my mid-20s all of a sudden having this severe, debilitating anxiety? Why do I constantly feel sad even though my life is actually going really well? Why do I switch moods so quickly when I'm like easily triggered by the smallest thing? When you understand in your family that your family has these different mental health diagnoses, again, untreated, not treated, diagnosed, not diagnosed, this helps you understand yourself, and it helps prepare you for when you have children, what to look out for, the signs, so that your kids are not being boggled down by these symptoms and feeling like they are all alone, when in reality, this is something that has been in your family for generations. So this is for ADHD, for autism, for trauma, because we know trauma is something that is passed down. Intergenerational trauma is a real thing. So if you know that your great-great-great-grandmother endured said trauma, you can believe that whether you give your child the best life or not, that they can still be impacted by that trauma, even though it has been decades since that trauma happened. Another thing you see on genograms is miscarriages. Another thing that people don't think about and why it's important. Miscarriages, when you look at, oh, my aunt had miscarriages, my cousin had miscarriages, my grandmother had miscarriages, you will understand that, again, that maternal part of things that happen within the reproduction system is bound to happen to your beautiful daughters and their beautiful daughters. So again, it's not such an isolated event. It's not something that women could feel like, hey, I'm going through this by myself, I have nobody to talk to. You understand that, hey, these are things that actually happen across the family. PCOS, endometriosis, and I know I'm saying that all wrong, gastro issues, all kinds of things. There's actually gastro issues from anxiety, headaches from anxiety, migraines from anxiety. You understand where it comes from. Another thing that you can actually see through genograms is, and this is a sickening thing, but it's a real thing. Outside of miscarriages, you can see molestation. Because as you know, when you have been molested, you have a 50-50 chance of molesting the next child. When you have been raped, you are more likely to then offend the next generation of children that come in. 50-50 chance. When you know these things, you can set yourself up to go and get help early on so that you don't repeat the same cycles that you see. Another cycle that you see in genograms is domestic violence. Your grandmother got beat on, your mother got beat on, and you got beat on. That is a real cycle that happens within families. If you never complete a genogram, you never understand that, hey, what I'm doing is repeating the same cycle. Even if, let's say you grew up with your grandmother, so you actually never witnessed your mother's domestic violence, you can still end up with a partner that is abusive because things are generational and trauma is generational. So you can still be aware of those things and be aware that, hey, I had to do something differently in order to not repeat this cycle. Another thing that is generational, adoption. There are layers. So somewhere, hey, am I the only one that's been adopted? Because in my immediate family, everybody has their biological mom and dad. But when you actually look at the overall huge family tree, you will see that adoption has actually happened a few times prior to your existence, prior to your adoption. So you know who to go to for support. You know who to talk to about it. You know what it looks like, what effects actually happen. That is another huge thing. Substance use. Substance use is a huge one because before this most conscious generation of adults, a lot of things were swept under the rug. So a lot of addiction has been passed down to our generation and passed down to our kid generations already because we haven't realized that addiction plagues the family. So an addiction is more than just substance. When we talk about addiction as far as drugs and alcohol, addiction could be sex. Addiction could be money. Addiction could be gambling. Addiction could be addicted to anger, addicted to toxicity. That's a real thing because it releases the same chemicals. So when you're able to get the full picture, you know, hey, if I pick up this drug, I'm more likely than the person sitting next to me, my friend sitting next to me, to be addicted the first time than anybody else because addiction plagues my family. So understanding addiction is truly important, or just understanding as an adult things that didn't make sense when you were a child, like, oh, why my uncle was always passed out or throwing up, because sometimes addiction is not always clear. Sometimes in Black families, because we can be high functioning within the addiction, you might not even know that addiction is happening. And that's why it's important to say, let me take this time to understand my family in closer depth so that I understand that, hey, that uncle, that auntie, that cousin was actually going through addiction. And that's why they couldn't raise their kids. That's why adoption happened. That's why molestation or certain things happen. Another thing you can see on a genogram is homelessness. You understand that homelessness is just as much as a cycle as domestic violence. It's just as much as a cycle as youth delinquents. It's a cycle. So when you understand that your mom was homeless, you know you have to work 10 times harder in order to break that cycle, because you will end up in the same problems. Because what you might not know is, hey, mom had a substance use problem. What you might not know is mom had bad money problems. What you might not know is mom wasn't financially, she didn't have financial literacy. She couldn't understand, read, comprehend, whatever that led to bad decisions to be made, or her being, signing her life away into contracts that led into us signing up on deals that left us underwater, that left us backwards, that left us homeless. So when we want to truly say, hey, I want to move on with my life, I want to not know certain parts of my life, or, hey, I never knew my dad's side of the family, I never knew him. It's important to then, as an adult, to make the decision of, even though I don't have a relationship with my dad, or I don't know my dad's family, let me further investigate. And this is why it's important. So for a lot of my clients that I see, for a lot of people that I know personally, they be like, well, I never met my dad, I don't really care. But you should care. Because you should know what is being passed down in your family. You should know what inherently you're putting your next partner, your future children, what you are now putting them in a situation to be susceptible to when you marry them or when you decide to have a kid. And when you know these things, you actually can make a better decision to say, I shouldn't have children because of these things, possibly because of these things that could be a challenge or a nuance in childbearing. Could be a problem. Now, at the end of the day, God has the last say so on any and everything. So that's not the end all be all, but it does warrant a well-needed discussion on, hey, should we have kids now? Hey, when we do have kids, should I be aware that, hey, high blood pressure runs in the family, or gestational diabetes, or hey, strokes run in my family, or hey, everybody that have died from stress-induced preventative diseases, so this is what we should do instead, or hey, this is how I should set myself up. So these discussions could be had early on, whether they're about emotional, psychological, financial. These are important things that will help break generational curses, right? Genograms can help understand education. What was the furthest my grandparents went, my parents went, my cousins went? So that, again, when you are seeking out validation and you're like, hey, I want to go to college, or I want to start a business, or I want to do trade school, and you're getting all this backlash from your family, you have to understand they can only understand as far as they went. They can only tell you their life through their perspective. So if they've never achieved these things, if they've never went that far academically, then guess what? They are setting you up because they are telling you either something that they've never experienced, or they're putting fear in you just like fear was in them where they couldn't accomplish their goals academically. So that will stop you from wanting to get support from someone that honestly don't know where you're trying to go. So instead of you trying to get that validation, you can validate yourself, or you can find mentors or community supports, and surround yourself around people that have achieved those things, so that they actually help you connect the dots and get you to where you're going. A huge part, and what I love the most of genograms, especially for my clients that are like very afraid of, like, I don't care to know about my family, especially father seems to be a very huge trend in I don't care to know about my family theme, but you build empathy and understanding. When you can understand something, you don't have to fill in the blanks to make sense of it. You can understand why you were adopted. You can understand why a certain traumatic thing happened to you. You can understand why your parents didn't go as far. You can understand why your aunt was so fearful. You can understand why your cousin made the decisions that they made. When you understand, it brings this enlightening process to have empathy for your family members, to understand that all your uncles and aunties are on drugs, or were on drugs, and then take care of their kids and left their kids out for dead, not because they did not love them, but because they had been beaten their whole entire lives. They had been raped their whole entire life by their mother's significant other, by their fathers. So you have to understand that before they were adults and they made these bad decisions, they were first children. And as children, their brains can't process certain trauma. Their brains couldn't process their mother sticking a needle in their arm at 12. Their brains couldn't process being in trap houses. Their brains couldn't process watching their mother get beat day in and day out. Their brains couldn't process their teachers telling them that you are an idiot and you will never amount to anything. Their brains couldn't process. Your brain don't fully develop until you're 25. So within those formative years that are the most important years of your existence, which is your childhood years, when you have to see and hear and be witness to things that shouldn't be real, then it leads to certain negative consequences, which might look like abandoning your children, might look like going and responding to your children in very immature ways, where you're fighting your kids, where you're downing your kids, where it leads you to homelessness, where it leads you to substance use, where it leads you to these diseases. You understand your family in full depth, so you stop blaming them. And you start asking questions and having conversations. And sometimes you even stop looking for answers, or you stop looking for them to be somebody that they are incapable of being because of what they have endured. So for Mental Health Month, I encourage you to go online. You can put in genograms, and there are softwares that will create genograms for you, and you just start with what you do know. And then with all the question marks, you take that and you go to your family, you go to those living family members, and you try to get some of those questions asked. Because from personal experience, I can tell you that as an adult, a lot of things made sense for me when it came to my family, when I realized all the trauma my family had endured and why my family ended up in some of the situations that they do have currently and what they've been through in the past. So genograms could be such an eye-opening things, and you should want to know where you come from. And it could be something simple. I'll tell you guys, something simple. Like my husband is bald in the middle of his head. My husband does not know his father. He knows a man that raised him, but he doesn't know his biological father. And his mother has passed. So that creates another barrier layer, because it's like, okay, I'm 30 some years old. Why should it matter? And I told him it matters for you to do, go through the ancestry.com and to find out where you come from to answer those questions, because you might want to go get this surgery, this hair implant surgery, or you might want to go and get these things done not knowing that these are genetic. So guess what? Your son might end up being bald by 30. Or might not. It might be something that is related to him and the lifestyle that he has endured and the trauma and the stress and all those things that, hey, maybe it's not related to your family history and maybe it's just you. So now your future kids, you know that they might be okay. Or, hey, it might be certain medications that you start your kids on when they become an adult that can help them prolong them losing their hair. So something that might be just as small as that of why it's important, because for him it's like, I don't care, and I hear it so much. But when I tell you, I have not met a client yet to do a genogram and not find deep reward from what they learn and how much they learn about themselves and their family. And genograms are meant for you to create it as an adult, but then you teach your child where they come from and you pass it down. So it is this continuum of them adding more and more to their family, so that your black child don't have to be the child in that class when they're doing family trees or genogram, to not know where they come from, to not know their lineage, their origins, their culture. Because it's sad. It's really sad, but it's such a theme. It's a theme. I see it all the time of we don't really know where we come from, and we don't really know a lot about our family. So let's do something different. Genograms are valuable tools for gaining insight into family dynamics, histories, and it facilitates a deeper understanding of individual behaviors and relationships. And another thing that genograms does, once you get done putting all this information on it, you literally then connect family relationships. So who have conflict with who have good, healthy relationships. And again, you see those patterns that needs to be broken. Those patterns of, hey, my mother hate her mother. Her mother hate her mother. Her mother hate her mother. So then it poses the question of the why. Why is this happening, and how do we break it? So then I don't be the mother that didn't hate my kid, then my kid hates me. So it answers a lot of questions that we tend to fill the blank in with negative reasons or negative thoughts of why something ended up a certain way when we don't have to. And especially if these family members are living and are capable and could comprehend, it opens a new discussion. And I can tell you, with working with clients all the way up to their 70s, that everybody In 2024, generations are ready to heal. So it's not just our generation. Generations are ready to heal. Generations are tired of suffering. And generations are ready to have these uncomfortable conversations that if you just thought 20 years back, they would have never put on the table. That they're ready to talk about that their nerves are bad is anxiety. That them being sad is depression. That them constantly being irritable is a mood disorder. They're ready to talk about all of these things that they have had to hold on to for 40, 50 years. They're ready to be free. They're ready to be liberated. So start the conversation now. As always, rise up and relate deeply with Rise and Relate with Rissa. And I'll be back for the next episode.